All right, today we are diving deep into a truly fascinating book, Baek Sehee's best-selling memoir, I Want to Die But I Want to Eat Tteokbokki. What this really is a super personal and honest record of her therapy sessions. It gives us this rare, unfiltered look into the journey of trying to understand and ultimately accept your own mind.
Right off the bat, that title just grabs you, doesn't it? It's more than just a title, though. It perfectly nails this feeling that so many of us have but maybe can't quite put into words. That strange, confusing battle of holding two completely opposite feelings in your head at the very same time.
I mean, just think about it for a second. Have you ever been at your absolute lowest, just feeling completely down, but still there's this little voice in your head that's like, I could really go for some pizza right now. Or, in this case, a plate of spicy rice cakes. That's what this is all about. That universal paradox of feeling deep sadness right alongside a simple, stubborn desire for life.
For Baek Sehee, the author, this was a huge source of suffering, because she had no clue that these feelings could even exist together. She describes it as floating in this gray area, this weird emotional limbo where you're not happy, but you're not totally devastated either. And living there is just confusing.
And this quote from her it says it all, right? It's not that big, dramatic depression you see in movies. It's this vague, lingering ache, this feeling of something being off, all while you're trying your best to seem totally fine on the outside. It was this exact feeling that finally pushed her to get some help.
So after years of just trying to power through it all on her own, she makes the decision to walk into a therapist's office. And it's in there that this constant low-level depression she's been carrying around for so long finally gets a name. And that name is dysthymia. You know, it's not about big, dramatic crashes, but more of a long-term, low-grade depression that just hangs around. And just having a word for it, a diagnosis, was a real turning point. It was the first step to actually starting to untangle everything she'd been feeling.
And that's really the heart of this book. We basically get a front-row seat inside the therapy room as she and her psychiatrist start to dig into the real root causes of her anxiety, her self-criticism, and that persistent sadness.
And a huge part of this journey, as you might guess, is about looking back. A lot of her therapy sessions keep coming back to these key moments in relationships from her past, the things that really shape how she sees herself in the world.
And what comes up in therapy is, well, it's a whole bunch of interconnected stuff. There's this low self-esteem that goes all the way back to her childhood that then bleeds into codependent relationships, which fuels this constant social anxiety and an obsession with how other people see her. It's like every problem is a thread in this one big, complicated knot.
Here's a really raw, painful example of where that all started. She talks about how the love she got felt like it wasn't a given. It was something she had to earn. And that taught her from a really young age that her value wasn't inherent, it was conditional. That's a lesson that just echoed through her entire life. And you can see how that childhood wound leads directly to her adult relationships. Her psychiatrist points out this brutal cycle she's in. She relies on her partners for a sense of stability, which makes her start to resent them. But then the idea of being alone is terrifying. It's a total catch-22. They also talk about this really interesting idea called the hedgehog's dilemma. Just imagine two hedgehogs in the cold, right? They want to huddle together for warmth, but if they get too close, they prick each other with their spines. That's her. She craves intimacy, she wants to be close to people, but at the same time, she's pushing them away to keep from getting hurt. So all of this digging and unpacking, it all leads to this massive, game-changing breakthrough in her therapy. It's a complete shift in how she sees things, a whole new way of looking at herself, other people, and the world. Okay, so here's the big idea. It's about moving from a one-dimensional view of the world to a three-dimensional one. For a long time, she was living in black and white, where one mistake makes someone a bad person. Our brains kind of love this because it's simple, but it's not real. The goal is to start seeing people and herself in 3D, as complex, contradictory, and deeply human. And here's the piece of advice from her therapist that really unlocks this whole thing. By accepting that other people are flawed, complex human beings, she can start to be more generous and forgiving with herself. It's about breaking that cycle of having these impossible standards for everyone, especially herself. Her psychiatrist has another really clever technique up his sleeve too. It's all about perspective. Instead of judging her life now against some imaginary perfect future, he asks her to look at her life today to the eyes of her 20-year-old self, that girl who was struggling and just dreaming of the life she actually has now.
And the effect of this is, wow, it's just huge. She suddenly realizes that this life she often thinks of as a failure is actually everything her younger self ever wanted. That simple change in perspective is a massive step toward accepting herself and just recognizing how far she's actually come.
So after all of this, where does she end up? Well, the point of the journey isn't to find a cure or to get rid of the darkness forever. It's about learning how to live with the full, messy, beautiful spectrum of what it means to be human.
The big takeaway here is that life is always going to have both. Happiness and unhappiness are like dance partners. The goal isn't to stop the music whenever a sad song comes on, it's to learn the steps to that dance too, knowing a happy song is probably coming up next. And the book's epilogue has a title that just wraps this all up perfectly. It really says it all, doesn't it? The value isn't just in feeling good all the time. By actually facing her own darkness, she's finally able to truly see and appreciate the light when it comes around.
Which brings us right back to where we started. The book kind of leaves us with this really powerful question to think about. What's that simple, grounding pleasure that keeps you going, that tethers you to life even when things feel dark? What's your tteokbokki?